back. Shout out to Pink Floyd.
Yes. Love Pink Floyd.
I love Pink Floyd. One of my actually my favorite song, probably one of my favorite songs of all time, no pun intended. It's a double pun, so it's an entendre, double entendre, is Time. And they have this great lyric, and it's a lyric, and it says, when you run and you run to catch up with the sun when it's sinking. And then it's like, when we conceptually think about it, we're time chasers.
Yes.
We're chasing sunlight. And it's only to find when it comes around up behind you again. That's the finalization of that lyric. So we chase, only to find out that life and time runs in this cycle. But we look at it in this linear format, like it has to be caught before it disappears. What does that do to us? What is that sort of aspect of life that Pink Floyd is describing, of this constant chase, say for actually what it means to live in the moment? What does it mean to actually live if that's all we do, right? If life just becomes that focus of time, is it life at all? And how do you know if you're making the right decision?
Well, the word chase.
It's chase. It was a very specific word that.
Yeah, so that gets me thinking, if I'm chasing something that I know is ending because the sun is setting.
Yeah.
Then why, is it fool's gold to chase?
Yeah, it's like chasing the unattainable.
Right.
You're never going to catch it.
Mm-mm.
But all you're going to find is that it comes around back up behind you again. So what am I really doing? Maybe I should stop running. This is not the path or the avenue, the linear one I need to take.
Yeah, now you're going against the American dream, bro.
I'm going against the American dream.
We got to run, work, push.
Push, retire, die.
Yeah.
The American dream is a strictly quantitative goal of life. The American dream is just a function of measurement of that more, which we've described many times. But what happens with the other 50% of your life? The quality of life. It's like the American dream is like, I'm living life to life, day to day, as like going to a McDonald's to McDonald's. They all give me the same type of burger.
Mm-hmm.
There's no difference in quality. There's no change in the experience. I have the same normalized experience over the entire globe for what I'm going to receive. So I know that when I go to that chain, this is the value that I'm going to receive for it. That's how I perceive. That's how, not me perceive, but I'm saying if I was in that sort of mindset, that strictly material, normalized, time-chasing, American dream mindset, I've missed all of the quality of life. And with that, I've missed opportunities to do things that really would define a better evolutionary path for myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's almost it's your ability to be able to view, like the Matrix. You can take the red pill or the blue pill.
Yeah.
So, how are you going to, because we have free will, so how are you going to make that decision? Are you going to take the red pill, which is the value that you're receiving? That's kind of, in my mind, what I'm getting from you is this bland, not good for you McDonald's. This treadmill of...
Treadmill is a good word for it.
Yeah, because, this treadmill of corruption and... what is a good word whenever you're disappointed in something? Like you try, and then you fail.
So like when the expectations drop?
Yes,
right?
Yeah. And so that's that treadmill, that most people are on. And then it's just...
It's a constant life of expectation. But when you expect, it forces you to not live in the moment because you're only looking at the future all the time.
Yes.
Now, when we had previously talked about certain subjects here on HDL, we mentioned a name, and it was a Sanskrit name, and it was called Arahat Atharsata. And it translates to the one who watches time. It doesn't live within it. It lives outside of it. It doesn't live in the material. It lives in this spiritual realm that isn't bound by this chasing. It's not bound by these cycles of time. It lives outside of it. So it's constantly in moment and it constantly moves itself through moments. It's a nice concept that Einstein also had too about, in terms of, certain functions of relativity and quantum mechanics, that there's a bunch of frames. If you take all these pictures and you stack them up together, and it might be for just like maybe 2 seconds, and I have 100,000 photos in those 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do I move through the moments, the smallest fractions of time? That is the definition of that moment. And so this, when we talk about Arahat Athasada, it's this thing that sits outside of time and watches those moments. It can flip through them. It can recognize the qualitative value. When you look at a photo, you stop for a second, and it brings up memories, good, bad, joyous, whatever it might be. But you can live there for that brief moment. That moment was captured.
Right.
And it's more than just the time that was captured. It was the energetic signature of everything that was happening within it. It's that qualitative sliver. And I talked to you about this before we jumped on the show, and I brought this up in an older episode. You cannot control time. Not one single function of it. We have a very finite beginning and end for us as human beings until we restart a cycle. So when you look to the future, you cannot live in the moment. When you reflect on the past, you cannot make good choices in the moment that will benefit your future. So you have no control over the past, and you really have no control over the future. What you have control over is the blink of an eye.
Yes.
A thought is a blink of an eye. That very brief photo frame of a moment. That's it. That's all you own in this entire world. It's the only thing that is given to you for ownership in this entire universe and creation is that moment. Everything else is your free will to live within it, within laws. But the one thing you own is that. So if we continue to focus on that sliver of a moment, it changes our perception of our reality and how we choose to live.
Yes.
But you and I are not coming up. This is not new news. There have been some very, smart thinkers, philosophical people, for instance, especially in early Greek culture, that had a descriptive way of talking about this. So there was a wonderful article that you shared with me that this woman wrote from Australia about 2 different functions of time. And this is important because if you look at creational law has cause and effect. It has inverses. It lives in constant balance.
Yes.
So if we're just looking at time quantitatively, it lacks balance. So what's the other half of time that we need to look at to balance our perspective of what this life actually means?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of to segue with you with quantum mechanics and Einstein. He was wrong in one thing. When he began to look at, why are you laughing, bro?
Jason is saying that Einstein was wrong in something. This is great.
No, they've proven it through tests. But the waves, when they look at an electron.
Yeah.
He's like, and that's the spooky part of quantum mechanics, where it's like, how can that object appear here and appear here? Yeah. I mean, they've done this with tests, and then when you're looking at it from whatever point that you're looking at, so that coffee cup could be there, but it could also be over there. Yep. And in what form is that coffee cup in? And Einstein was like, that's too, he used the word spooky. Like, even though tests would prove it.
Yeah, like the double slit experiment.
Yes, yeah.
But again, it's the perception of the person who's observing. So to go full circle, to talk about cycles, there's a lot of good things happening here. You go back to Arahat Athasada, the one who watches time, their perspective is removed. So depending on the angle at which you view that moment,
whether you're sitting on a porch,
changes the qualitative aspect and value of that moment. So your ability to learn and reference things in your life and relearn from a moment of past experience happens when you remove yourself from the quantitative aspect and put it in the qualitative.
Because as with quantum mechanics, and we're going to get into time here, is
we're on fire.
We don't know what cause and effect is going to be, because what our viewpoint is different from what the universe's viewpoint. We're such in a micro.
Well, think about
just being on this little globe that we're in, whenever we see trillions and trillions of galaxies.
Yeah, we have 2 eyes that look forward and around.
Yes.
So essentially they're always in like some sort of like vector, but creation looks at everything from every single angle at once.
Yeah, that's how you prove quantum mechanics.
Quantum mechanics is proved. Jason Alex, Nobel Prize.
but the ancient Greeks got this.
They nailed it.
Yeah,
they
and
freaking nailed it. We should have wore. I'm telling you, we should have wore togas for this episode.
I know we should have. That would have been funny. This was McKinley Valentine. She's in Melbourne, Australia. I'm going to reach out to her. She's the one that wrote this article. She's a full-time writer. So we want to give credit where credit's due. And the article's name, it's on Medium, is Understanding How the Ancient Greeks Viewed Time Will Make Your Life Richer.
Yeah.
I know the title's kind of...
Well, richer not in the material sense.
Right.
This is not the retirement, American dream mindset. This is a fullness, a ripeness of a fruit, if you look at it like that. Is that clear?
Yeah.
I don't want to pick the apple too soon.
Yes.
I want to let it ripen in that moment. And so when I do receive that ripe fruit, it's going to be more of an experience to live with, whatever that time it took for that thing to develop.
Yeah.
That's the richness. And
you're going to see these two words that we're going to mention. The Greeks caught on to it, but it's in the Bible. It's in Sanskrit. It's in, two versions of time. Especially here in our American culture, we're so into, and we'll get into Chronos. We're so into Chronos, which is measured and counted.
So we look at. I wish I had a watch.
You have a watch on.
No. Let me finish the thought. I wish I had a watch, like another $20 watch, that only recognized moments.
Yes.
This thing's always, it never goes back. Nothing like that. It's just, I can't live in the moment. The thing's always ticking forward.
Mm-hmm.
So
the Whoop kind of does that. It
tells, your heart's jacked up. Go back and look at it.
Yeah, exactly. Or it goes into moments. Like you had a moment of working out. You had a moment of sleep.
Yeah.
But what is this lived in experience moment? What did the Greeks call that?
The Kairos.
Yes.
Kairos. And it's the balance. It's the inverse of Chronos. But everything gets a personality in Greek culture. Literally everything. Can we personify this? Can we turn it into some sort of deity? And what's nice about that conceptually is when you take a complex topic and you put it into a human attribute, it allows people to find relation to it. And artwork was very important. Nobody, carves something a specific way unless they're totally just nuts as an artist. There's intention behind everything. Everything, yeah. So when we review that intention and we look at the depicted imagery of Kairos, it tells a phenomenal story about how to learn about what this deity or concept of time really is.
Yeah, and I want to get into understanding both of these, Chronos and quantitative, and then we'll get into that. Where Chronos is quantitative, Kairos is qualitative. Quantitative, yes.
Yeah.
Qualitative.
Qualitative.
It's quality.
Quali. Yeah.
Isn't that an Australian word? Quali.
Yeah, quali.
If it's not, it should be.
Yeah, quali. Bang.
That's. Yeah. That's. So it measures moments, not seconds. Further, it refers to the right moment, the opportune moment, the perfect moment.
Yeah.
It's that pause, that excel. Like fate, and they say this fate can't be changed. Like in the sense, obviously we're not,
because when
we believe in free will. We don't believe in, the ability to Calvinism in the sense of where, our, why are you looking at me so weird, bro?
Dropping Calvinism on me?
But
is there any other philosophies you want to bring up at 9:18 in the morning?
Well, I don't want to get too into theology, but there's that view of where things are set.
Yep.
And it's fixed.
And it's
and that's what Calvinism was, and then we began to look at John Wesley and this free will movement that came in, understanding that we have the ability, which we're on that side of things. We don't believe in this.
I'm stuck in here with you. I know what my fate is.
It's a moment, bro.
Yeah, We're having a moment. We're having a moment. A long moment. No, but you're right, though. So, again, bring up Chronos. What was the description of Chronos?
So Chronos is measured second, minutes, hours, years. It also is measured and counted, and I think the word counted is because that's where you're talking about the journey, where we're like, oh shit, it's 9 a.m.
Yep.
and I was supposed to do this at 9:10. I'm trying to be real practical right now.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? We're always fighting father time.
Yeah, we're fighting father time. And again, it forces us out of the moment. All we're looking at is like, here's a measurement. What did I do within that amount of time? And how do I go back and reflect on if that was the right use of time? They're looking at it. It looks time as an asset with a decay value of seconds. The longer a second goes by, the more decay you have.
Right.
Well, that's freaking lame. I can't enjoy anything, And am I supposed to feel like life is worth less if I choose to sit up on the mountaintop and do absolutely nothing? Just because I spent so much time sitting there? Is there a decay in my life's value? That doesn't add up. We as human beings, it's important that we measure things. Okay? Everything is essentially infinite within its own distance, and that's a function of fractals. But we are defining preset standards of how to measure things so that when we look at the universe, we can be like, oh, in our mind, we can say, okay, this far and this far, and oh, that's a long length of time, or, that's a light year. It allows us to study and understand the material world. But through all that understanding, we become so inundated with this aspect of time that we can't live in the qualitative aspect. This immeasurable moment, this immeasurable richness, this brief stopping of that time to understand what we need to learn from it.
Yeah, and when we look at Father Time, it's this old guy, big long gray beard. He's got an hourglass. And they said that in the paintings, its resemblance to the Grim Reaper is
he's got a scythe.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the Romans looked at, Chronos as Saturn.
Yes.
And when they think of time, there's only, what do they say? Two things in life are definite: death and taxes. Yeah. When you're born, you have a specific amount of time.
Right.
That's how they look at it. So when they say time is the ender of all things, well, it truly is. It just eats up this material world. And as it passes, things just, go from something then to dust. And then you never find it ever again. And that was that kind of morbid idea. But when you look at Father Time, yes, here's the hourglass. And then when that sand is done, there goes your head.
Yeah. And I like the words that they use, like the word cruel. And then like Chronos or Saturn to the Romans, like you mentioned, it's what kills you. But it doesn't just kill you, it eats you.
Yeah, it consumes you.
Yes.
Time consumes you. Killing you is one thing, where it's just like, I could kill you, leave your body here.
Right.
But it literally envelops. It takes you inside of itself. You're stuck. You live within time. You have no control over that material experience anymore. There's no movement for you.
Yeah, and the myth was that Saturn ate his sons.
Yeah, he said, well, what's the point of having them? They're going to die anyway. I might as well eat them right now.
But I mean, and we look at that and it's like, okay, he ate his newborn sons. So cruel. And then we look at it as like, but when we start taking that and putting it into our lives, then we can say, on this journey of life, if I'm in this Chronos moments constantly, it's eating us alive, literally.
It literally eats you alive.
I mean, I've seen people that can't even have a conversation. I mean, I know people this way. They live in like 15-minute increments.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, I'm having this meeting from here to here. What if it took 10 minutes to break through the ice and now you're having a really productive meeting in 5 minutes? Now you just shut it off because you're into Chronos?
How long did it take you and I to break the ice when, we speak to certain prospective buyers that come in?
Yeah, exactly.
An hour and a half.
Yeah.
But, I've learned something in those moments with that person. It's not about measuring like, oh, blah, 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 blah.
We have an hour meeting.
You have an hour meeting. It's like the second I like deadlock it like that, it's just like, what's your focus? Where's the real learning that's happening here?
Yeah, and this article reference a painting, Saturn devouring his son.
Yeah,
and they talk about this gruesome depravity.
Yeah, he's literally like,
pulling
if you're like
him apart.
Pulling flesh apart, and you see it like peeling and stuff like that off the head.
But I mean, that gruesomeness and that cruelty is intentional in that painting. It's bringing about what you become a slave, and I'm going to use that word. You become a slave to this $20.
To this $20 watch.
Right.
But I chose to do this. It's my perspective. I victimized myself in saying I'm bound by just this.
Because time is not imposing on your free will.
Time just goes.
Yeah.
We put a measurement.
It's agnostic.
Here's what time was just doing its thing in
Yes.
cycles. We put a measurement on it, and then we applied that measurement to us as a human being. Well, shit. Of course it's going to be perceived as negative.
Yes.
But time is not something negative or evil. It's just time. It's agnostic. You know, it doesn't care. It's just being time.
So why do you feel like, especially in Western culture, this slavery to time has developed?
It probably has a lot to do with economics and business culture. We base everything off of finance.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a present value of future earnings or you have a future value of present earnings. And depending on the amount of time and the volatility within that time says this is how much value you receive.
Yeah, it's like our currency is interest-based, so we always have to have war.
Yeah, we always have to have war.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We always need instability because instability changes our time value.
Mm-hmm.
Something's very unstable for a short period of time. Okay, that's going to determine that price, right? But that reflects all of our choices, how we manufacture things, how we make our life decisions. And it's really driven by the world of finance. Our perspective, our philosophy of life is heavily driven by finance.
And so you have decay rates, and the list goes on. So
that's correct.
So when we take these financial economic models and we put them into time, it's created these daily planners with 15-minute increments. This successful people are always super busy. They barely have time for anything.
I don't have time for that.
They're bound by a schedule.
I'm going to call the guy the other day, and he said, before, I'm not going to mention the name, but he said, before I had a child, I thought I was busy. I was always doing something. And then when I had the child, he's like, I don't know how, but I found time for it. He said, now I'm able to do my business and the child. And it's like, well, what was your conception, your perspective of what time and your value of time actually was? Isn't that interesting? It's like drive 15-minute increments, and you think there's no time for anything. But once something's new interjected in your life, you rework your perspective of time. So what that tells me is that the perspective is false from the get-go. Think about it. If I'm constantly rewriting this law of time I have in my mind, it means it's not a real law. I'm living by this false idea of time. Is that clear?
Yeah, no.
If the Bible needs to be rewritten so many times and changed, that means whatever was written in it can't totally be truthful. If I have to rewrite the Quran or the Torah, what's in it cannot totally be truthful. You don't need to rewrite something that is true. There's no reason to it because truth is timeless.
Right.
So if I'm living in this state of time for everything, and that's my perspective, I live in a constant state of untruth. Oh, nice. I feel better.
Yeah. So
that was the coffee.
Yeah, I know. But when we look at untruth and we look at it's interesting. I watched a documentary this weekend on like the leading lady. She's done it for 40 years. She did like Boston cover art, and any band that you can think of in the 70s and 80s. She had designed the record covers.
Oh, I love
but
Boston,
she went from that.
ship.
She's like, I don't even like to be known for that. So like typography, she's like #1 in the world. Like people look to her, like she does all the Metropolitan Opera stuff in New York, the public.
Cool.
And she was talking about, she goes, it's so funny because she lives out, out of the city, but she goes, I have to go out of the city. And she comes and she lives next to a lake with, in New York with her husband. And so she paints and she goes, it's when I'm in the cab, as I'm commuting, and when I'm painting is when I get all my ideas.
It's when the thoughts stop.
Yes.
It's when you become in the moment.
Yes.
It's when you think about not thinking.
And she goes, I'm at, I work 60, 80 hours a week and I'm at work, but it's very rare that the ideas come there. You see what I'm saying? It's so, and if we really think about it, how many times have we gotten a great idea in the shower? How many times have we got a great idea when we're hiking?
My greatest idea that I've had so far was when I was sitting in a bathrobe in a desk chair. Thinking about typing a paper, and I was unemployed at the time. That was when my greatest idea came, when I wasn't in work. And what is that idea?
Notice that word you said, in work.
Yeah, I was in work. it's not the function of working, but I was in this environment of work, which is distracting me from what's important. And that bathrobe in writing that paper when I was unemployed led to Tartle and being in 70 plus countries right now.
Yes.
I was in a bathrobe writing something and it just flowed. I allowed it to come in. It was in that moment. You know, it was not when I was articulating something inside of a business, right? Or, you know, doing some other like laborious task. I was just there, just being there in that moment. And that moment allowed that creativity to flow.
Yeah. And she said something that was really interesting. She goes, when I'm in the city and I see, and she just looks at signs, like old signs and new signs and all the different fonts. And she goes, I pay attention to all of that. That's my job. So I began to, and then and this was interesting, and I'm observing. And so I see all these different fonts from like the 1910s, 1920s, these old signs from 1950s. And then my mind, as I'm sitting in the cabin, I'm looking, I got the window halfway rolled down and I'm just looking at all these old signs. She goes, some of them have letters removed off of them. Some of them look horrific and ugly, and so then and this was interesting. She goes, as I'm observing them, then my mind starts to create, and then I can look at, is this going to be artistic and beautiful? Is this going to rely with what the client wants? And she did the whole new design in Canada with their rail system.
Oh, really?
And it's Canada Rail. And it's so simple and so beautiful. You're just like, oh my God, it's like amazing. She did the Citi logo too. You remember when Citibank and Travelers Insurance merged together? So there was an umbrella. And
I have a call with Citi at 12 o'clock.
Yeah, there you go.
I was kidding.
Yeah. So whenever you look at, and then the logo is real simple. It's the CITI red, and it has a little symbol going. It doesn't look like an umbrella, but that's what it's intended to be. And it's like when we see simplistic art like that, and we see something that is beautiful, and it just flows and it goes, and it's like in those moments, or whether a painter is not sitting there thinking, okay, I can paint from 7:15 to 8:45.
Yeah,
they'll go if they're feeling that moment, they may paint for 8 hours straight.
It reminds me of, who Frank Frazetta is?
Yeah, I've heard of the name. Yeah,
Frank Frazetta made these really cool sci-fi paintings, like really far out there. And he had all this time that the company commissioned to, okay, we need a painting, you have 3 weeks to get it done, or a month. And he wouldn't do anything all month. But then in the middle of the night, he was in the moment, and he painted all night until this absolute masterpiece was finished. And that's what it was. He waited for that moment when he felt that creational spark inside of him, and he allowed that to then translate to a canvas. Just absolutely phenomenal, incredible stuff. And it's amazing to see what was actually coming out of his mind. But that's what that is, that these times of Kairos are what we need to search for. And so if you want to learn more about that time of Kairos,
stay tuned to the next episode.
Stay tuned to the next episode.
Get out of this cruel Chronos and get into the mischievous Kairos.
Yeah, get into the mischievous Kairos. And if you want to get there and you want to do it safely, you can go to Quality Mazda in Albuquerque.
Yes.
And you can hook yourself up with a pretty sweet ride.
Yes, one of our sponsors, QualityMazda.com. It's QualityMazdaNM.com is the website if you're looking at getting a new vehicle. And then we have Tartle.co.
Yeah. If you're looking to share your data towards world causes to help uplift humanity and also get paid to do so, you can do that for free.
Yes, do that for free. Sign up, tartle.co, Tartle.co.